Well, this is a response video on the general subject of why we survive. Um, the answers others provide are usually kind of metaphorical, metaphysical, whatever the right terminology is. One theory is that the Big Bang was essentially an expression of desire, an expression of will to do something, will to create, and that we're just an extension of that will, that desire, that drive that's just built into the whole process of matter and energy and its evolution and its dynamic. Other theories are that you know the end is really just something to be opposed. There's some duality where there's no life without death, in essence. That somehow the two feed on each other, or that the drive is just a resistance, or as if the mechanism was built that way for some purpose, or for some um, that the design is somehow rational, or um, engineered, or appropriate, or sensible, or any of those words. So anyway, to me, it's all bullshit. We survive because that is the nature of the rules of the game. And we're part of a game. We're part of the natural selection game. The game created by the first living organism, in essence, obviously created with the Big Bang, but the point is that it takes a life form to be able to construct a deliberate survival mechanism. And that is obviously the first thing a reproducing organism is going to install, in essence, is the capacity to reproduce. And the inevitable consequence of the capacity to reproduce is the fact that there has to be some limit against reproduction becoming excessive, past the environmental limits, where you could not survive merely because you created so many copies of yourself that your copies consume all the resources, and then you all die because you exhaust your capacity to survive. So obviously, organisms that did not have a mechanism built into them to die would not die. And there's also the other half to that, which is the fact that the organism strives to live, to simply because that's obviously there's incentive to build into a reproducing organism a desire to reproduce, or a will, or a drive, or a mechanism that imposes that obligation on the organism. So obviously we've evolved. We have this capacity to step outside the maze, to look around, to say, why does this, why is that? And for a long time now, the common propaganda is that we have a survival instinct, that animals survive by instinct, and that they have a drive or desire to survive. And it's all bullshit to me. Animals certainly don't know anything about death. They don't understand the concept in any sophisticated manner. I mean, there's some animals, elephants, for example, that obviously have not obviously, I don't know why I'm saying obviously so much. Anyway, they display a reverence, an importance, a significance to their dead. I mean, they find tusks, in the skeleton, and they will investigate the bones and the tusks and try to understand what it is that they are communing with. They might even recognize a relative or something by some distinctive characteristic, and they're obviously going through some sort of process. It's probably not mourning, it's probably curiosity, it's probably wonder, it's probably missing them some sort of grief even, maybe. But anyway, So why do we live? We don't live because we say, oh yes, let's make an objective decision. We'll intentionally survive. That's our goal. We're going to intentionally survive. Um, we live because we are driven, we are built to need. And the obvious needs are, yes, we need food, we need nourishment, we need something to feed the body. And then the second needs are, yes, we need something to reproduce with, and then it goes on from there. We obviously need to have some kind of mechanisms to keep us from getting into trouble, fear, the rest of it. So anyway, as our culture has sort of evolved, that we have become more aware of things, we have become a conditioned social animal. We have turned death into something to be feared. Once we figured out what the concept was, seemed like it was the opposite. It's like the opposite of food. It's like the opposite of nourishment. It's like the opposite of satisfaction. It is perceived as something that takes away, and it does. It takes away future opportunity. It doesn't take away anything you had, but it certainly ends the drive, the desire. You're not going to eat your next meal if you're dead. And obviously we want our next meal. We desire it. We are hungry for it. And we are hungry for the more that's out there. And surviving is just a consequence of that hunger. But we never really deliberately do it. And then, some people talk about life and death, these people who talk about dualities and the rest of this mush. And, they talk about death like it doesn't mean anything. No, there's two parts to death. There is the fact that you will no longer exist, and intellectually and mentally dealing with that fact that, oh, I'm not going to exist anymore. I have a huge preposterous ego. How can I dare stand the universe existing without me in it? Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, we have to first overcome that obstacle, because we often are too egotistical to even imagine how anything beautiful will ever be appreciated again without us here to do it. And then there's the other half of it, which is the process of dying. Obviously, the process of dying is usually pretty nasty. It's the physical destruction of health. You have to basically harm the body to kill the body. So, yeah, we have a rational fear of the dying process because it is usually unpleasant. Commonly unpleasant, let's put it that way. So let me, here's a thought experiment. Let's say, there was a button that you had in your possession, that you owned, that was yours, your button. And you could press this button, and you had, you could program it two ways. You could program it to instantaneously end your life. You're just instantaneous. Not even a millisecond passes by. As soon as you press the button, you just disappear. You're gone, dead, ruined, finished. Or you could press the button and you go through a 10-minute joyride, so to speak, through your life adventure, your memories, your best memories, only the good ones. And so you have this nice little voyage, this nice little summing up, this nice little end chapter to your life, to observe your life, reflect on it. So let's say you had this power, this control. How long do you think you would end up living? Do you think there's a point in, there's all these points in our lives where we go through some, well, not everyone, but most people, anyway, a lot of people, horrible suffering, unpleasantness. We just, please cut my head off, kill me, do whatever you have to do. I can't stand this anymore. Relieve me. Obviously, we'd be pressing that button probably. Not because we hate survival, but just because, it's just, at that moment, it's just way too painful. And we're not distraught by the idea. We wouldn't be horrified by the idea of dying, of being dead. And we would certainly appreciate having some relief from the pain and having this nice 10-minute joyride before we disappear. And so we would press the button. Oh, I know we would. You know you would. Unless you had obligations, of course, or a purpose to complete, and you might endure more pain because you had this purpose to complete. But the simple pleasures wouldn't be seducing you. It would take a pretty significant pleasure for you not to press that button, because the instinct isn't to survive. The instinct is to be comfortable. Comfort is what we strive for. That's all the time I got.